on Gold FM.
A very good evening. I'm Avanindra Som and you're listening to the news in detail on Gold FM. Sri Lanka marks 7th commemoration of Easter Sunday attacks. Cardinal raises questions on unresolved suspicions. Former State Minister Premalal Jayasekara arrested. Sri Lanka's inflation increases to 2.4%. Sri Lankan mobile phone density surges to 147 per 100 individuals. US forces board and seize vessel in Indian Ocean. IEA warns of worst ever energy crisis. Tehran says it's preparing new cards for the battlefield as ceasefire period runs out.
The top story on Gold FM.
Today marks 7 years since the Easter Sunday attacks. The coordinated strikes on 7 locations, including 3 churches, which resulted in over 260 deaths and left more than 500 people injured. Religious programs took place in churches across the island under heavy security to observe the anniversary with a 2-minute silence observed at 8:45 am to honour the deceased. The main ceremony at Kochikade brought together religious leaders, diplomats and families of the victims to pay their respects. The Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith, called on the President to fulfill the pledge made at Katuapitiya Church itself to deliver justice for the victims of the Easter Sunday terror attacks. He reminded authorities of the promises given to those affected by the 2019 bombings. Now, in the interest of clarity, we left his remarks undubbed.
මේ මහා ඝාතන රැල්ල හා විනාශයේ පිටුපස සිටින සියලුම බලවේග හා පුද්ගලයන් සොයා හඳුනා ගැනීම ව්‍යසනයට ගොදුරු වූ අයගේ පමණක් නොව එයින් බරපතල ලෙස වික්ෂිප්තයට පත් වූ අපගේද මේ රටේ සියලුම පුරවැසියන්ගේද අයිතියක් වන බවද එහිදී යුක්තිය සැමට සාධාරණව ඉටු කර දීම රට කරවන අයගේ යුතුයකම බවද කිව යුතුය. අද පවතින රජයට පෙර 2019 වසරේ සිට පිහිටි සියලුම රජයන් මේ මිනිමරු ප්‍රහාරයන්ගේ සත්‍යතාවය පසුපස යාමට දැක් වූ වමනාව ඉතා අල්ප මට්ටමක පැවති බවත් බොහෝ දුරට ඒ ජනාධිපතිවරුන් හා පොලිස්පතිවරුන් මෙන්ම නීතිපතිවරුන්ද මේ පිළිබඳ විමර්ශන නොසලකා හරින්නට හෝ කඩාකප්පල් කිරීමට යොදාගත් උපාය මාර්ගයේ වූයේ තමන්ට රිසිවන නිගමන ලබාගත් හැකි කමිටුපත් කිරීම හා විටින් විට නැගෙන විරුද්ධතාවලට తాවකාලිකව පැලැස්තර අලවා ඒවාට පිළිතුරු නොදීමට උත්සාහ කිරීම මෙන්ම ප්‍රයෝගකාරී උප්පර වැට්ටි මගින් විමර්ශන බොඳ කර දැමීමය. එවැනි පසුබිමක තරාතිරම නොබලා මේ සිද්ධීන්ට සම්බන්ධ වූවන් ගෙන්වා හෝ තමන් බාරයට ගෙන හෝ ප්‍රශ්න කිරීමේ වරදක් නැත. අවශ්‍ය වන්නේ සත්‍ය සෙවීමයි. ඒ සඳහා අවංක ලෙස ක්‍රියාකාරී වන විට මේ කුමන්ත්‍රණ වලට සම්බන්ධ වූ ඇතැම් දේශපාලනික බලවේග කුලප්පු වීම බලාපොරොත්තු විය හැකි දෙයකි. අපරාධ පරීක්ෂණ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුව කෙලින්ම හෝ වක්‍රව මෙම මිනිමැරුම් පිටුපස සිටියේ කවුරුන්දැයි සොයා බැලීම සඳහා අදාළ සියලු කරුණු සිය විමසුම් මැසට යොමු කළ යුතුය.
During the event, Maulavi Masood Safi Ruswi addressed the gathering before Cardinal Ranjith delivered his plea for legal accountability. Now, in the interest of clarity, once again we left his remarks undubbed.
දැන් මේ පාස්කු ප්‍රහාරය විහිළුවක් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. විහිළුවක් විතරක් නෙමෙයි ව්‍යාපාරයකුත් වෙලා. කාලයක් යුද්ධය විකුණගෙන කෑවා. දැන් පාස්කු ප්‍රහාරය විකුණගෙන කනවා. නැත්තම් ඒක තියලා දේශපාලනය කරනවා. පාස්කු ප්‍රහාරය සම්බන්ධයෙන් මහජන අපේ මුදල් වැය කරලා ලක්ෂ ගණන් කෝටි ගණන් වේදම් කරලා වාර්තා කිහිපයක් හැදුවා. ඒ වගේම FBI ඇමරිකාව, AFP ඕස්ට්‍රේලියාව, නිව් ස්කොට්ලන්ඩ් යාඩ් එක්සත් රාජධානිය, ඉන්ටර්පෝල් වැනි විදේශ වාර්තා කිහිපයන් එළිදැක්වුවා. මගේ විශ්වාසය අනුව හැම වාර්තාවකම අවසානයේදී නිර්දේශ කිහිපයක් ලබා දීලා තිබුණා. හැබැයි අද වෙනකන් කිසිම නිර්දේශයක් ක්‍රියාත්මක නොකරපු නිසා තමයි මේක ව්‍යාපාරයක් හැටියට පත් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ කොහොමද ඒක ව්‍යාපාරයක් හැටියට පත් වුනේ කියලා කිව්වොත් දැන් හැම එක්කෙනාම පොත් ලියන්න පටන් ගන්නගන් තියෙනවා. මේක ඔබතුමාට කරන්න බැරි වුණොත් මේ පාලන සමයේදී මම හිතනවා මේක කියන්නත් ඕනේ. හැබැයි කියන්නත් නරකයි. මම දන්නේ මේ ඊට පස්සේ මට අවස්ථාවක් ලැබෙයිද කියලා. ඔබතුමා මේක හරියට ප්‍රයෝජනයක් හැටියට ගත්තේ නැත්නම් ඔබතුමාටත් දුවන්න වෙයි. ආයෙ නිකන් ලොවෙත් නැති
Now, in his remarks, the Maulavi referred to those he said had turned the attack into a business through the volume of writing and commentary it has generated. However, it is worth noting that major acts of international terrorism, including the September 11 attacks in the United States, continue to generate books, academic studies, and official inquiries more than 2 decades on. Events of this scale routinely attract long-form analyses across the world. Now, in this backdrop, Gold FM spoke to 2 figures who have examined the Easter Sunday attack in depth. Former Minister and author Uday Gammanpila, who has recently released his own book on the subject, and Professor Rohan Gunaratne, anti-terrorism expert and a professor of security studies at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. Now, Gammanpila says his recently released book, In Search of the Mastermind of the Easter Attack, sets out to examine every conspiracy theory in circulation, and he argues that no one has yet come forward to dispute his findings.
I have written a book titled In Search of Mastermind of the Easter Sunday Attack. In that book, I have addressed every single conspiracy theory prevailed with regard to Easter Sunday attack. The different conspiracy theories are mainly fabricated by present Director CID, Chani Abeysekara, and the Secretary to Ministry of Public Security, Avis Ratna. I have explained in detail why they have fabricated this kind of conspiracy theories, as well as why others are accepted, embrace those theories. I have released this book 3 weeks ago. Today, nobody has pointed out so far my fact observations, so conclusions are wrong. Therefore, if somebody is still talking about a mastermind behind the Easter Sunday attack, they should first come and attack my book, and they should prove that what I said in my book was wrong. Unfortunately, nobody has come forward to do that. It means they are just expressing their imagination without facts and evidence. Otherwise, they should have challenged my book. I have demolished every single conspiracy theory in that book.
Gammanpila also points to a step taken by the Sri Lankan government itself in response to the persistent conspiracy claims. A request to 2 of the world's most respected law enforcement agencies for a fresh investigation. He says both agencies turned down the request not out of disinterest, but because, in their view, the investigation had already been conclusively completed.
Sri Lankan government has requested both FBI of USA as well as Australian Federal Police to assist Sri Lankan government to have another investigation into the Easter Sunday attack. Both of these were reputed institutes. If you take FBI, for instance, it is accepted as the best investigation institute in the entire world. Both these institutes have replied to Sri Lankan government saying no, because we have done in-depth investigations into this attack, and we have clearly established who the culprits were, who the mastermind was. Therefore, there is no necessity from their point of view to do another and further investigation into the Easter Sunday attack.
That view is echoed by Professor Rohan Gunaratne, who has tracked the Easter Sunday investigation since its earliest days and authored the book titled Sri Lanka's Easter Sunday Massacre: Lessons for the International Community. He notes that the evidence does not rest on a single inquiry but on at least 6 separate investigations, local and international. Gunaratne walks through the full catalogue of investigations conducted into the attack, both within Sri Lanka and by international agencies. Now, Gunaratne argues that despite the weight of this documentation, the Easter Sunday attack continues to be pulled into political debate, a pattern he says cuts across both sides of the aisle. He makes a direct appeal for the government, opposition and the church alike to move away from competing narratives and return to what can be proven in a court of law.
Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, this Easter Sunday attack has been used as a football by the political parties. It has also been used as a political football by other parties who are interested in personal and political gain. I think that it is time for all Sri Lanka, government and opposition, the church, everyone to stop these false narratives and attacking each other, but to rely on the evidence. Because every fact should be based on evidence, credible evidence that will stand in a court of law. Now, with regard to the Easter Sunday attack, there were 6 very important investigations. Of course, Justice Janak De Silva's report, the Presidential Commission, is the most comprehensive investigation. Other than that report, we have the Justice Imam report. And Justice Imam report investigated into asylum seekers' allegations. Then another report is the Parliamentary Select Committee report. It is not as strong as the Presidential Commission into Easter Sunday attack by Justice Janak. Then there's another Magis Alvis who has done a report. And then there is the Interpol report. Interpol has conducted a very deep investigation. And then there is the report by the Australian Federal Police. And finally, there's a report by the Federal Bureau of Investigation where the chief of the investigation received an international award.
This is the local news on Gold FM.
Minister of Transport Bimal Ratnaik inaugurated a pilot low-floor bus project for individuals with special needs at the Markumura Multimodal Transport Centre today. 10 air-conditioned buses specifically designed for wheelchair accessibility enter service under the first phase of this initiative. Each vehicle accommodates 80 passengers with 33 seats and operates every 40 minutes between Markumura and Petta and Markumura to Kadawatha. Former State Minister Premalal Jayasekara was arrested by police in Nuwara over an incident involving alleged criminal intimidation and threats made with a firearm during a clash between two groups. Police stated that the suspect was taken into custody following complaints that an individual had been threatened with a firearm, adding that the license for the weapon in question had already expired at the time of the incident. He is expected to be produced before court tomorrow.
Now for some news in brief.
A sacred sapling from the Jai Shri Mahabodhi was ceremoniously presented in Anuradhapura to a delegation including Venerable Panyakara, who plans to take it to the United States as a part of the International World Peace Walk.
The business news on Gold FM.
The Colombo Bourse was mixed today, with the all-share price index gaining 55.45 points to end the day at 22,625.48 points. Meanwhile, S&P SL20 dropped 0.33 points to end the day at 6,222.46 points. Turnover was 3.6 billion rupees. Brent crude prices fell to $95.18 today, marking a decrease of 0.31%. West Texas Intermediate crude followed this downward trend, settling at $87.35 with a slight dip of 0.08%.
International news on Gold FM.
The United States Pentagon reports that American forces boarded a sanctioned oil tank overnight in the Indo-Pacific region to disrupt illicit networks supporting Iran. The US Department of War confirms it conducted a maritime interdiction of the stateless vessel Tiffany without incident. In a statement shared on social media, officials say international waters provide no refuge for sanctioned vessels, providing material support to Tehran. Now, the BBC reports ship tracking data shows the tanker made a sharp turn in the early hours of Tuesday and currently sits roughly 700 kilometers southeast of Sri Lanka. Marine traffic data indicates Tiffany, which carries a capacity of 300 tons, remains loaded with cargo. The vessel and its linked Indian shipping company currently face American sanctions for their alleged ties to Iranian trade. According to marine traffic data, which was also verified by BBC, the Tiffany departed the Gulf region on 10th April and made a brief stop near the Sri Lankan port of Galle on the 18th of April prior to the interception. While the tank originally estimated an arrival in Singapore by Sunday, location data confirms the US military continues global maritime enforcement efforts against the vessel. Meanwhile, President Trump took to social media to claim Tehran is failing to uphold the conditions of the ceasefire, which is set to expire tomorrow. The current agreement hinges on the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Tensions remain high as the US military maintains what it describes as a blockade within a blockade, aiming to apply maximum economic pressure on Iran's oil production to force a more permanent diplomatic resolution.
Entertainment news on Gold FM.
Jio Studios and the Mumbai Film Company have debuted the first trailer for Raja Shivaji, a sprawling historical epic depicting the life of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. The film, which marks the Ritesh Deshmukh's directorial debut alongside his performance in the titular role, is scheduled for a global release on the 1st of May in both Marathi and Hindi.
Sports news on Gold FM.
Formula One has made a series of rule changes to address concerns about the new engine regulations that were introduced for this season. The move addresses the complex energy management systems of the new power units, which feature an even split between internal combustion and electrical power. Drivers, including four-time world champion Max Verstappen, had argued the heavy reliance on battery management was overshadowing racing skill, with Verstappen suggesting the shift could influence his long-term future in the sport. Now, the new amendments seek to refine engine operations, allowing drivers to push for maximum performance during qualifying while narrowing the significant speed gaps seen during recent Grand Prix. That's all the news for now. Stay tuned to Gold FM for the latest updates. The next news highlight at 7:30 p.m. as well as the news roundup of the day at 8:30 p.m.